I asked pro Greatsword players 10 questions on the secrets of how to improve on Greatsword, and their answers will have you questioning. Have I been playing Greatsword wrong this whole time? Well, at least that's what I asked myself, and I'm 2400. Use the 2023 World Champion of Brawlhalla 1v1s taking the win all while on Jaeyoon. HardyMJ, probably the first person you think of when you hear the words Greatsword Pro. Skeldra, currently PR7 in Europe and placed 9th at BCX 2023 while taking out many notable names on the way. Scound, an up-and-coming Brawlhalla pro, currently PR68 and is constantly at the top of the ranked leaderboards. Anubis, an underrated Brawlhalla player who, like Scound, is constantly at the top of ranked leaderboards. A couple weeks ago, I made a community post asking for questions you'd want to have answered by Greatsword pros. The first question we'll start off with is, in your opinion, who is the best and worst Greatsword legend? Skeldra says, the question is very difficult as I think it is very situational. Jaeyoon is the overall best legend in terms of having a balance of everything you need. However, Mako has way more utility with his D-Sig, which is an absolute game changer, or Magyar with his insane weapon combo but low speed. I'm starting to prefer Mako in this meta, but overall, Jaeyoon is your best choice if you want to have a character that isn't too situational. Anubis says, you can't really say who's the best or the worst when the meta is literally counterpicking. For example, Jaeyoon is better than Magyar in general, but in this meta, Magyar is better because he has a lot of defense, and most of the people in higher levels are playing heavy weapons, such as Taros, Zal, etc. So you can't really say which legend is better, but if I really want to rank them, it's number 1 Jaeyoon, 2 Arcadia, 3 Magyar, 4 Mako. HardyMJ says, I think Arcadia is the best, Mako is the worst. Scound says, Magyar is definitely the best, Mako is the worst. Yu says, Jaeyoon the best, Mako the worst. The second question is, are there any times where you should be using Grounded Dair or Groundpound? Yu says, Grounded Dair only if it's the only option viable. I only use Groundpound for baiting. Scound says, I use Grounded Dair a lot to land on weapons that try and play for their stacked options, and Groundpound the wall when all they have left is a dodge. Anubis says, yeah, no, unless you want to lose on purpose. Sure, if they have 0 options while coming back to stage, you can maybe Groundpound them, but that's it. And Dair, sure, you can punish people with it, but it's quite literally the worst punish you could go for. HardyMJ says, Groundpound offstage isn't good 99% of the time, but Grounded Dair has its uses for punishes and weird offstage tech. Skeldra says, no, Grounded Dair does 2 damage, and I throw out Groundpound once every 20 games. The third question is, what do you think the most common misconception about Greatsword is, or common mistake people make while playing it? Scound says, most common mistake is that Greatsword wants to play only grounded. Skeldra says, a common misconception is that you always need to go for long 5-piece combos. The best way to play Greatsword is to attempt to send your opponent into the air with a grounded recovery or sidelight into an in-light read, and then deal as much damage as possible with Nair juggling. Your aerial moves do significantly more damage than your grounded moves. Yu says, trying to play neutral and not having versatility to use more aerial attacks. Anubis says, mashing. Hardy says, no idea what kind of misconceptions there are, to be honest. Question 4. What's the best way to approach weapons like Orb, Blasters, and Lance? Skeldra says, you want to understand the hitboxes of your opponent's moves and attempt to outspace them enough to where you can punish them fast enough after they whiff a move. Then, you can mix up punishing with approaching with a grounded recovery and you should be alright. HardyMJ says, I just hold stage control and dash around them. If I am throwing out a move first, it's usually sidelight, as it is harder for them to punish, or it's me trying to anti-air with Nair. Scound says, best way to approach those weapons is to not approach. Wait for the orb sidelight, blasters sidelight, lance air, and punish. Anubis says, be patient. The only way you can approach on Greatsword is with movement, and to do that, you have to be very patient. Use says, abuse the range of sidelight opener, or try to hit dash, fast fall, recovery. Question 5 is more of a fun question, and that's, what weapon do you want the next Greatsword legend to have? Use says, Greatsword Orb. Skeldra says, Cannon Greatsword or Lance Greatsword would be amazing. We need a Greatsword legend with a secondary weapon that can kill easily. Cannon would be the best for sure. Magyar could have been amazing, but his stats aren't the best, and his SIGs are too honest. Anubis says, Greatsword Axe would be cool. Scound says, Greatsword Boots, please! HardyMJ says, Axe for sure. Question 6 is, should you be reacting or reading on Greatsword? Scound says, reacting 100,000% of the time. HardyMJ says, mix of reactions and reads, but Greatsword is one of the weapons you need to react most with, similar to like Katars or Scythe. Skeldra says, I absolutely suck at reading on Greatsword. There are Plat Greatsword players who are better at reading dodges than me. I focus on so much during a game that it's often difficult for me to try and read a dodge. Doesn't matter though, because I'm very good at reacting. I always react because it makes the game easier for me. Use says, normally I go for reads, but when I'm not confident, I just reset. Anubis says, reacting for sure, unless you're fighting someone whose brain is rotten and is dodging the same way all the time. Question 7. In your opinion, what's the hardest dodge to react to on Greatsword? Use says, spot dodge and dodge down in / out. Skeldra says, out / out and up dodge. Scound says, up and in. Anubis says, it's a hot take, but dodge down. Since if you don't react instantly most of the times, they can just hit you first since Greatsword is fairly slow. HardyMJ says, hardest dodge to read depends on what move is hit, but there isn't really a hard to read dodge. Question 8. What's the best way to fight someone with a floaty or passive playstyle? HardyMJ says, catching the landings with Nair or Inlight, and against passive, using stage control properly and baiting out attacks. Scound says, juggle with Nairs and recovery. Skeldra says, watch the amount of jumps they have. As soon as you see the red jumps, last jump, you go in with Nairs / recovery and abuse them. If they don't always use their last jump, then approach them once they have one jump left. It's likely that they will use their last jump. From there, you will have easy Nairs and recoveries, with the only option they have to avoid you is either dodging or waking up. In summary, learn how to use your aerials. Playing aerial against a Greatsword player is the biggest mistake you can possibly make. Anubis says, playing passive against Greatsword is useless. It puts you in a disadvantage too. So if you lose to someone passive on Greatsword, it's your fault. Floaty players might be annoying to deal with if you're playing grounded. Just play aerial and you're good to go. Yu says, normally I try to be close and hit Nair when they're jumping. Question 9. What is one piece of advice you can give for Greatsword players in Gold, players in Plat, and players after they hit Diamond? Anubis says, first of all, Greatsword is a different weapon in higher levels. You can't compare a pro's Greatsword to a Gold, Plat, etc. But if you don't want to get better and you just want to mash with Greatsword, it's the easiest weapon in those elos. But if you want to actually get better, quit mashing and try playing it like a normal weapon. Sure, you might drop elo, but it's worth it. Skeldra says, I don't really see a big difference between a Gold Greatsword player and a Diamond Greatsword player. Both just run into their opponents and start throwing out moves. However, there are some differences. Gold. Your opponent's dodges will be consistent. Usually most opponents will dodge the same way. Find what dodge they use after sidelight and then punish that dodge for the rest of the game. If they do in/up and in dodge, I recommend doing jump Dair, recovery, jump nair after hitting a sidelight. That's way easier to do than a 5-piece, and also does more damage. Plat. Learn how to punish your opponent. Learn how to outspace and not run into your opponent's hitboxes. Diamond. Watch gameplay from the best Greatsword players and copy their options. Also, you always want to move with the purpose of finding the next hit. Never move without a purpose. Always keep focus on your opponent or on your own character if your opponent is moving fast. Scound says, play slower. Focus more attention on your opponent's habits and exploit Greatsword to abuse them. HardyMJ says, work on covering your whiffs with jump dodge instead of mashing. Use says, gold. Learn how to catch dodges like spot, in, and out. Plat. Learn the best options for everything. Best punishes. Diamond. Learn when you need to get a dodge and when you can just reset. And the last question. If you could give one general tip for players to improve and work on with Greatsword, what would it be? HardyMJ says, optimize combos, work on covering whiffs, and catching landings. Those have been the 3 biggest problems out of the people I've coached Greatsword. People underestimate how much catching landings with Greatsword matters. It pieces together the offense because the opponents feel like they have nowhere to go. Skeldra says, don't try to learn long combos, they aren't optimal and you won't need them. Stick to what works, learn how to use the aerials, your main damaging moves. Anubis says, stop mashing and stop trying to be HardyMJ. Be patient, be confident, and know your weapon's flaws, and stop waiting on your opponent to get hit by your 37,267th wake up after you miss. Use your brain instead of your muscles. Scound says, practice the game and learn to react off of half dash. And we're going to end this off with Use. Use says, the weapon allows you to play more aggressive and miss sometimes. But if you see that something is not working, don't keep trying. The weapon has so many options. You have the chance to try something new every time. You need to be confident, know when the opponent is not going to dodge to attack straight, and try to learn his dodge patterns. I think this is it. Just don't be afraid in trying what is on your mind. Thank you all for watching. I plan to make more videos like these for the other weapons too, so comment down below some questions that you have and pros you want to see answer them, and I'll do my best to get those answered.